You turn my morning into dancing. You turn my morning into dancing. Your love changes everything. There's something about your love. Something about your love changes everything. Changes everything. Something about your love. Something about your love changes everything. Changes everything. Something about your love. Something about your love changes everything. Changes everything. Something about your love. Something about your love changes everything. Changes everything. Something about your love. Something about your love changes everything. Changes everything. Something about your love. Something about your love changes everything. You turn my morning into dancing. 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 'Cause your love changes everything. Your love changes everything. You turn my morning into dancing. You turn my morning into dancing. You turn my morning into dancing. 'Cause your love changes everything. Your love changes everything. Oh, there's something about your love. Something about your love changes everything in my body. Oh, something about your love. Something about your love changes everything. It changes everything. Something about your love. Something about your love changes everything. It changes everything. Something about your love. Something about your love changes everything. Changes everything. Something about your love. Something about your love changes everything. Something about your love. Something about your love changes everything. Changes everything. Something about your love. Something about your love changes everything. Changes everything. Something about your love. Something about your love changes everything. You turn my morning into dancing. You turn my morning into dancing. You turn my morning into dancing.
morning, Firmly Rooted, Rooted Men. Pleasure to be with you. Matt Ryan, elder here at Firmly Rooted Ministries. For any of you who might not know me, it's been a few weeks since I've been here with you. Apparently, last time I was up, I completely missed it, which is the first time that's happened. So I apologize to any of you who were sitting here a couple weeks ago waiting for me to pop on and just waiting and waiting. I hope that wasn't very many of you. We'll kind of get back into the swing here, and I won't let that happen again. So we're still digging through Proverbs, as you know. It's been quite some time, and there's just so much in here, right? The one thing I always want to remember about Proverbs is, even though it feels like it can be condemning, that the things discussed in Proverb aren't salvation issues, right? So there's always a difference, right? What's a salvation issue, and what is your father's telling you, I want a better life for you, so let me give you advice on how to live, because the life here on earth can be good too. You can live well and live full now, and that's really what Proverbs is about. What many of the things we hear about, many of the words that Jesus spoke throughout the New Testament as well, this is the way that I model for you to live your life. As any of you with kids will know, there may be things we tried to model, and there may be things that we accidentally modeled, right? They say more is caught than taught. And so taking on an academic pursuit to try to learn how to live can be harder, right? Some of us have been very fortunate and been around people who role modeled what a godly man lives like and what that fruit looks like. And so if you have had that blessing, I encourage you to think on those stories, think of those kind of people as you read through Proverbs, and think of what might have happened in their life to transform them, to make them submit to these things, to live wisely. And for others who haven't, we're in this boat together, that we've got to learn it and learn how to apply it, learn how to become it, learn how to submit to it, to really give up ourselves, to really die to the old man inside. It's one of those things we hear a lot, but really commit to that process of, when thoughts come up to tell me this isn't for me, or this doesn't apply to me, or my life's easier this way, or change is too hard, those are your opportunities to die to the old man and say, no, I'm going to embrace something new. It might be scary, it might be lonely, it might be dark, but I'm going to cling to you, Father, and I'm going to submit to your word, and I'm going to try to live this way today. And I think that's the best we can do. Each day we can make a choice, right? We're not going to know all of it at once. We're not going to always have the right Bible verse in our mind or know the right way, but if you wake up with a spirit and an attitude to say, God, thank you for raising me up this morning. Thank you for giving me another day, an opportunity to serve you. I'm going to submit to you today. Tell me the word you would have for me. And I bet fairly often the word's going to be something from Proverbs. Something about living your life as a new man. So anyway, I know I usually talk about the weather at the beginning, but I don't know if maybe we should all start building an ark together, because we can't seem to get away from rain. If it's not raining at the moment, it seems like rain's driving around looking for a place to park, and it's going to be here anytime these last few weeks. So I know we're ready to be beyond that, and I'm hoping that you have maybe some last chance of fall activities. It looks like it's going to be wintry before we would like it to be. So get out there and enjoy God's creation. Anyway, digging into the Word. So we're in chapter 26 of Proverbs. We're in verses 8 through 12. And today has one of those interesting things that happens when you read different translations of the Bible. And sometimes you find that there's a word here or there that's different, and sometimes it's a wholly different verse. And that's what I found today, looking at verse 10. In the NIV and the NASB versions that we read, there is one verse, but if you look at some King James and maybe the English Standard Version, I'm not positive which version I'm looking at, but there's a totally different. And so when I look to do commentaries or studies on each verse, I'm finding things that have nothing to do with what I read, which is interesting. So we'll look at that. Anyway, Like like tying a stone in a sling is the giving of honor to a fool. Like a thorn bush in a drunkard's hand is a proverb in the mouth of the fool. Like an archer who wounds at random is one who hires a fool or any passerby. You seeing a theme? So who is the fool, right? Well, the fool is someone who can't do it on its own, which means inherently it's all of us. It's who we are born as. It's who we walk as until we're brought into light, until we submit ourselves to the truth and to goodness. So this, obviously the imagery is real simple here, tying a stone in a sling, right? Whole idea of a sling, we let it go and it propels the object toward its target, right? You think of David and Goliath, right? The sling and the stone, right? His stone was big enough to injure Goliath. Here the idea is something tiny, maybe even think of like a grain, right? A pebble, and how useless that would be. Or the idea of tying it in anyway, if it's the right size of ammo. You've tied it in, now it's not going to go anywhere. In fact, it might come back and hit you. And so it's presenting danger to yourself. Not only is it ineffective, but it's also dangerous. Honor to a fool, the same thing. Not only is it ineffective because it's misplaced, but it can also be dangerous because people who are following you or trusting your word are then going to be following that fool. That's a little touchy where we get to today of who we're following. Who is it that's in our echo chamber, right? That's part of social media, is we get to create and follow only the voices we like. And we get to hear things over and over again that are only from a certain perspective or a certain person or whatever it is. Sometimes we got to be real careful about what we're bringing forth from those people, especially if they might be the fool. Like an archer who wounds at random. This is the one that's interesting. If you look in some older versions of the Bible, it's the great God that formed all things both rewardeth the fool and rewardeth transgressors, which is a totally different message, right? The archer who wounds at random is kind of an easier piece of imagery that follows in with this other stuff. But I want to get to what is one of the most seminal verses in my life that I always remember. As a dog returns to its vomit, so the fool repeats their folly. The fool's hopeless. Just like a dog will hopelessly eat its vomit, eat its own excrement. That's just what they do. They're just looking for something to eat. And when we domesticate animals, we have to teach them not to do those things because we care. We see a better way for them, right? We know it will make them sick. But how many times in my life have I returned to my vomit? Have I returned to the behaviors that are comfortable because it's what I know, it's what I do, even though it's not at all what God wants for me? How often do I keep holding on to the old me, the old version, the old truths? Well, were never true at all. The lies that I'm not good enough, that I'll never add up, that I'll never be enough for my wife, for my kids, for my community, whatever it is, those kind of toxic things that keep entering our mind, and a lot of this is couched in anxiety, those intrusive thoughts that just come in and we can't get rid of them, and they come back again and again and again, and we don't cast them out. We're not declaring victory. We're not declaring the power of the Lord over those thoughts and crushing the devil's head again. We're allowing him to continue to lie to us. And I don't know how that hits you. That might be, we all have different things we struggle with, but it seems like it's a universal thing. That we all have the tendency to return to our vomit, to seek nutrition or nourishment, to seek in the wrong places, looking for whether it be love or acceptance or whatever. So I just challenge you today. Don't you dare return to that vomit. That's the old version of you. That's not you anymore. You are a man who used to believe those thoughts, and you don't anymore. You're a man who believed you weren't good enough, but you don't anymore, because you now identify through your real identity, your new identity in Christ, that you are a holy, redeemed, loved child of God and set free by his sacrifice. That's all I got today. I hope that that's a thought that you can carry with you, and I hope it's a blessing to you. Let's have an amazing Friday. Let's make it a firmly rooted day. And may someone see Jesus in us today. Peace.